This is the Championship Clubs podcast, the show that shines a light on English rugby's second flight. Join us every fortnight and check us out on the socials at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And we are back. This is the Championship Clubs podcast. It is the second episode of Series 2. On a personal note, I'm Michael Casey. I'm delighted to be back in the hot seat. Gully, when you recorded last time, we were looking ahead to the first round of the new season with much excitement. We're now 3 rounds deep and obviously looking into round 4 next week. And I think the results have been incredible, really, really unpredictable. I tried to predict some results from the last round on our Instagram account. I think I got 2 out of 6. But what have you made of the early season results and the runners and riders?
Hey, it's been really interesting, hasn't it? I had a go at predicting the first week and then second week and third week. And I'm just looking back through the fixtures. And the one thing that jumps out is how close all the games are. Really, really tight fixtures. I think sort of in week 2 we had A-Ray on, didn't we? And sort of he was talking about the banana skin of Amtul. It's not really a banana skin anymore, is it? Because Cov don't win down there. So that, although seemed like a bit of a surprise after them beating Donny in the first weekend, actually Amtul at home is a tricky opposition for anyone. So it's a good win for the mob. Good for Tommy as well, who's coming back from his hip operation. I think he was on the sideline for the first time. So good win there. I think week 2, looking at the results again, we had the Richmond-Nottingham game, which is another close one. And then, obviously, I think the standout one that weekend was the Jersey-Bedford game. So we've got a good friend of ours, Gareth, who was over there in Jersey, and apparently that was a belter of a game. And the scoreline doesn't really... There's 40-28, but I think it was a lot closer there. And I think the Jersey fans were in for a bit of a treat. And it was a cracking weekend for all the fans that went over from Bedford as well. So week 2 was a cracking weekend. And then going back to this weekend, Pirates, did it again on Sunday. So turning over the big boys, which they've got a habit of doing now. So especially early on in the year, that's the one that sticks out. And it's sort of, I think everybody's won a game bar London Scottish. So it's the league's really, really tight. Jersey sit at the top and beaten, but only haven't played 2 games. So yeah, it's looking like an exciting league. And some great rugby being played, looking at some of the games and some of the highlights I've seen.
Yeah, it certainly has been. I know from a Donny perspective, we were down at Goldington Road on Friday night and lost out 31-23 there. But probably Donny's best performance of the season so far, and hopefully we can build into that. Jersey Reds at Castle Park on Saturday. And Steve Bowden made a point when I interviewed him this week that if we were to beat Jersey on Saturday, that every team in the league would have lost. And we are only 4 rounds deep, which I think is incredible and just highlights the openness of the league. There is, of course, a team that have had their own remarkable results around the fixtures that we've had so far that we haven't talked about. And it brings me nicely to introduce today's first guest. Kicking off with a belter, he is the Vice Chancellor, Principal and CEO of Hartpury University and has recently been drafted onto the Championship Strategic Review Working Group, which we will doubtlessly talk about later on. But Russell Marchant, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, Mike. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Russell, let's dive into it. Obviously, 3 results for yourself, and I mean, I bet when the fixture list came out, you were thinking, flipping it, we've been tucked up a little bit here. Started with the visit of the Trailfinders, then you've got to go to the Menai, and then obviously a resurgent Nottingham in week 3. What's the mood in the camp down there in Gloucester on the back of the first 3 results?
Yeah, I think we're quite happy with how things are, and I think the squad's in a good place at the moment. Barnsley and Pasty, our coaches, planned a really tough start to the season. Our pre-season was Worcester, Ospreys and Bristol. And then you tack on to that, as you say, going away to Ealing and hosting Pirates. So a really tough start for the squad. And we were concerned that at the end of that 5-week period, their heads were up and they'd still be as positive as they were at the beginning. And they certainly have achieved that. They've done a great job, and the lads have really stuck well together. As far as the league goes, yeah, Ealing caught us a bit cold to start with, and we got back into the game in the second half, only to see it go away a bit in the last 10 minutes as we ran out of steam a little bit. Pirates here nearly a fortnight ago. Pirates, we love having Pirates here for their spectators and the crack. We hate having them here as a team because we've never beaten them in the Championship before this year. And so a great day for us. The boys put on a heck of a performance and really stood up physically and went for it. And the result didn't flatter us at all. You know, we could have had another couple of scores which were chalked off for reasons which we can't figure out on a video. But that happens to us all, no doubt. Then, inevitably, after 5 weeks of hard games, we've picked up a few knocks and bumps and bruises. We went away to Nottingham, determined to try and follow up that good result against Pirates. Key player tweaked an injury in the warm-up, which didn't help. And then I think we must have had the fastest yellow card of the season after 4 seconds. And by the time that boy was back on the park, we were 14 points down and struggling a little. Not that there was anything wrong with the decision. The decision was 100% correct. But, you know, we came back into that, and we whilst we lost the game, we came away full of positives because we demonstrated that we could get back into the game, get over that early setback. And with some youngsters coming through who were getting opportunities because of injuries, and they didn't let us down. So, yeah, the squad's in a good place at the moment, and looking forward to tomorrow night's game.
Just Russell, just sort of my view and of Hartpury over the years is sort of one that Mike touched on earlier. I'm not entirely clear on everything, but looking at the season and looking from the outside, you know, that first game against Ealing, you know, like you said, you got one on the nose early doors, and then you've come back into the game and scored 20 points, I think. And I think sort of, would you put that down to a bit of belief? You've had your coaching staff in there for a long time now with Barnsley and Pasty. Pasty's been there for a long time. And is that settled coaching group helped with your sort of settling into the Championship? Obviously, you've risen through the leagues quite a lot over the years, like your Amptals, your Ealings and Jerseys. And not having that settled group of coaches and allows players to come in and play with confidence and have a good crack at Championship rugby.
I think having a settled group of coaches certainly helps. You know, you add Wayne Thompson to that in the scrum and so on, and Rhys Oakley. It really does help. You know, this is our 5th year in the Championship. We will inevitably see a massive change in squad year on year. So some of it comes down, you know, you've got a lot of young boys coming through because that's what we're here for. And it's a challenge for our coaches to recruit the right kind of people, mature players, older players who can fit into that setup and add value to it, and just help. Because some of our younger players, they're very much maturing as semi-pros at that level.
Yeah. It's interesting you say there, Russell. Obviously, it is now your 5th year in the league, but I think maybe to some of us, it still feels a little bit like you are the new boys in many respects. Now, I'm a Hartpury alumni myself. It's an institution very close to my heart. I had 3 great years there, and one that I know a lot about. But we haven't really had the opportunity to shine a light on the Hartpury RFC, the Championship side, or the wider institution. I know at Doncaster, we kind of are self-titled the most promoted side in English rugby union history, but I'd say your Saturday side would certainly give us a run for the money on that accolade. And if you just tell us a little bit more about the last couple of decades that you've had.
Well, I suppose, you know, rugby at Hartpury started in the early 2000s, so we've come a fair distance since then. The early sporting model at Hartpury was almost American university type. You know, let's decide that we're going to have a team. We'll throw some big scholarships about. We'll bring in some big players. Academically, maybe not the strongest academically.
Yeah, that sounds about right for myself.
Like how you ended up.
And you build that success, and reputationally that builds. And we've kind of evolved from that model now. Yet we do very much see what we're doing on the pitch as part of a recruitment exercise for the university and the college. It's a massive part of what we do. But it is very much a genuine dual pathway now, and we won't, we can't take on players that won't, students that don't want to engage academically and don't want to engage in courses. So we've kind of matured the model and created that dual pathway for both college and university students, and that works really well. I think at the moment, we run 17 teams every week.
Wow.
Across the different levels. People think Hartpury is just about 1 or 2 teams. It's not. There's 17 teams out there. We have a heck of a lot of impact on clubs in Gloucestershire. There'll hardly be a club in Gloucestershire that doesn't have Hartpury students playing for it, Hartpury alumni, Hartpury coaches involved, etc. And we're really keen on that. We're really open to that. It's fantastic to see Cinderford doing so well in National 1 at the moment, and to recognise so many of the boys that are there, and that's brilliant. So yeah, the RFC is the top of the pyramid for us. It's probably the most obvious shop window, but Bucks Rugby is important to us, Ace Rugby is important to us, Women's Rugby, the Gloucester Hartpury team, they're all important. We've nearly 2,000 sports students here. And that's a big part of our recruitment exercise, is the profile of these teams.
I think it's pretty. These are the things that I didn't know. Like, it's sort of, I sit here listening, and 17 teams are going out a week. That's some achievement. That is not only players developing, is it? You've got a coach development squad there, team, not squad, and it's the bigger picture. You've got all of your S&C students, I imagine, that are all part of this, and it's a massive impact, not just only on, like you said, the RFC team, but it's the development of the whole program. And as a result of that, teams in the area are benefiting from it, and also rugby, and the bigger things. The rugby world's benefiting from that program.
The spread of Hartpury alumni, whether they're players, S&C, nutritionists, sports therapists, is massive, and that's it's kind of virtuous circle, because we have so much sporting activity here. I mean, with 17 rugby teams, but we put out 43 teams a week across rugby, football, netball, all the rest of the sports. So you've got some great opportunities for therapists, coaches, everybody to develop here on the campus. And that's huge. Probably the one we're missing that we'll probably be looking to address in the near future is referees. We offer plenty of opportunities for coaching development, but we're not good at supporting referee development yet, or not as good as we could be. So that's our next area, if you like, that we want to look at.
Mike's about to retire. Mike, get your hand away.
You touched on the alumni that you have, and I mean, it's a pretty impressive cast, and I think there are literally, you say hundreds of ex-Hartpury students playing international, have played international rugby, but there are actually hundreds. I've listed a couple here: Johnny May, Ellis Genge, Johnny Hill, Lewis Reed-Sammett, Ross Moriarty, and then on the women's side, the likes of Kelly Smith, Titania Hurd, and Tabitha Cobson. Is the development of those players, are they just are they jewels in the crown, or is that is the strategic pathway to create these players? Is that the focus, or is that just almost, as I say, the topping, the icing on the cake?
It's an interesting point you make, Mike, and we look at that here, because the reality is, what people look at are the results of those 17 teams or 43 teams in different sports or whatever. But for us internally, we're about developing individuals. So it's finding that balance, and I think coaching in a setup, people might look at Hartpury and look at our coaching team and think, well, that's a cushy job there. But I actually think it's one of the toughest jobs, because you've got to balance the priority of developing the individual and allowing that individual to get to their full potential with what you're trying to do with a team. And they don't always match. Sometimes you have to make really tough calls in the interest of the individual. I look at Lewis Reed-Sammett, for example. When he came to us as a 16-year-old, he was an out-and-out centre, big lad for his age, 6 foot plus, used to running through under 16 squads in Wales. It was the coaches here that moved him onto the wing, helped him develop that skill set. Now, we were over the moon when Lewis got into the Lions, and one of the best moments for me was when they had new Lions presenting a shirt online to somebody who'd had the biggest impact on their career. Well, Lewis gave it to Wayne Thompson, who's an ex-front rower, but our junior academy manager. And that said it all for me. And so it's finding that balance. We're always trying to produce the next England international, the next Welsh international. For me, obviously, over the moon that we've got Alex Craig capped for Scotland, but hopefully Ben Vellacourt will not be too far behind him. And we're always looking at those individuals and finding that balance.
Just looking at my own career, Russell, and it makes me feel a little bit better looking at, because I played for Ampthill against Hartpury 2 years on the road at Hartpury, and I think both games we were going at a point a minute. And I think I look back at the squad. I think Pelledri was playing. I think Vellacourt was playing. I think Prothero danced around us about 10 times and scored 15 tries. It felt like. And I remember coming back from Hartpury. I think I'd have been mid-30s. And Georgie, my wife, she drove me back to Coventry where my parents live, and I couldn't speak. I was done. I was like, that's it. I am not playing rugby again. But now I look back at the squad and I think, oh, actually, Ben, it wasn't too bad. There was some proper serious rugby players. I think it was Negri with you as well at one point.
Yes, Seb Negri was a big student, a big man for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal, it's a churn of players, isn't it? And it's just, you just produce, and it's great to see there's probably a whole line that you know about that we don't know yet that could be coming through over the next few years.
Oh, definitely. We work obviously very closely with Gloucester, but we also work with other Premiership clubs in the Welsh regions, and we're constantly bringing people through. And you can see youngsters here and you think, yeah, he's going to end up in a white shirt before too long. I mean, we always thought Lewis Rees-Zammit had the real potential to go the full way. We just didn't. I think he surprised us in just how quickly he got that international recognition and took his chance. But there are others along the way coming along, and I'm hesitating to name them because I think you put a hell of a lot of pressure on a young kid if it ever got out. So I'll hang on to those names, but certainly there's a few that will be there in the next 2 or 3, 4 years. That's for sure.
Sorry, Mike. I was just going to touch on just the squad and the squad dynamic. Obviously, you've had Luke Eves, who's been there a while now. Sort of in terms of recruitment for that squad, they're important signings for you, aren't they? Because if you get the wrong character or the player is in it for the wrong reason, it can really disrupt what's going on within the club as well the hard has gone in over the years. Yeah, I mean,
Jimmy Williams has been a great re-signing, if you like, for Hartpury. Having been with us before and come back, and JB scrum halves had a great impact on the squad. So people like that. Greaves in the back row over many years. He hasn't played as many games maybe recently, but he's still a good influence on the squad, and that's what you want. You've got people like that the youngsters can look up to and get the right attitude from.
And also imagine you've got the one end where you've got the youngsters starting their careers, and then the guys at the other end is sort of that transition sort of period as well, which potentially you guys can help with, isn't there?
Excuse me. Yeah, there is. Sometimes that transition period for them is maybe topping up their qualifications, maybe completing a degree or a master's and making themselves employable. Sometimes it's the first step into coaching, and that's important as well. So we try and look at the big picture.
It's obviously talking about the big picture and this sort of holistic approach to rugby development and, of course, the academic side of it. It's quite interesting. I'd be quite interested to hear where the sort of the championship ambition lies for the Saturday side. Then obviously we are sort of a championship rugby show, and we talk to guests who they sort of live and die by that Saturday result of championship rugby. And obviously at Hartpury, it's part of a much, I guess, big. It's a cog in a big wheel. But in terms of the ambition for the Saturday side, then this season and the next 2 or 3, where is that, Russell?
Yeah, I think we are different. There's no doubt about that. We've just. But I'll give you an example. Tommy Matthews on number 10, England under number 10. Been a college student, went away to Northampton's, come back to us as a university student this year, doing really well, and Wasps come along and offer him a 3-month contract. So we don't stand in his way. We just, that's straight away, Tommy, you've got to go. But he'll continue to study as a student online. And if there's any benefit from all the hassle we've had with COVID, it's that we've become pretty damn good at delivering online if we need be. So that's a great example of an individual. It does disappoint me a little bit. And you mentioned the RFU review group, and I get a bit annoyed at people in there that say, well, there's only 2 or 3 clubs in the championship have got any ambition. That's bollocks. We've got loads of ambition. We want our team to be as high up that championship table as possible. We want as many boys to be progressing through us into premiership contracts and into internationals. And that's our ambition, and that's what we focus on. And if it meant, if we won the championship one year, we wouldn't be embarrassed about that. We'd be absolutely over the moon, And there are other clubs in the championship that maybe aren't full-time pro clubs, but they still have ambition. I think it's really wrong of people to think, well, if you're not full-time in the championship, if you're not pushing to get into the premiership, you've got no ambition. That's rubbish.
I love that, and I think that probably strikes true with a lot of other people that have come on this show or have listened to the show. You touched on it, and I think now seems like a good time to get into it then. So the strategic review, for those that are unaware, the idea is it comprises a cast of people across rugby, some big names in there, obviously like Sir Ian McGeechan, John Inverdale, Nigel Melville, Phil de Glanville, Conor O'Shea, plus many more. And so my understanding is it's a working group that will meet between August and December with a mandate to review the structure, governance, commercial and financial models that underpin the league, and then provide recommendations to the RFU in the new year for a more sustainable, efficient and successful championship. How is it going? What's happened? What's the update? I've got so much that I'd like to know, and really interested in what you can tell us, Russell.
It sounds so easy when you explain it like that. And obviously, there are some confidential elements that I can't talk about. Conor O'Shea asked me to join the group, and I probably think possibly because I'm not typical. I'm not a club owner. I don't come with too much baggage, and I am genuinely interested in the development of the game and the health of the game. It is a tough group. It's tough for the whole review group, though. The rights and wrongs of the RFU decision to slash funding is almost in the past. There's no point in going back over that ground, and there aren't any pots of honey that are suddenly going to right that wrong. So as clubs in the championship, we have to accept that. And it's not just those that are there now, it's those that are in National 1 with aspirations to come up, etc. So it's interesting, and it is a dilemma for the review group, because is the championship there as a club development route, as the top of that pyramid, and clubs going up, potentially doing an Ealing or a Pirates and pushing to go into the Premiership, or is it there as a player development route? Because I can sit at one end of the continuum and say, in my view, how do we make the championship really worthwhile. And that has to be about how it links to the success of English rugby, and English rugby right at the top. And for me, which is a bit strange sitting here as a Scotsman, everything should be about England winning the World Cup. England wins the World Cup, we get young kids excited about rugby, we get people coming into our game, we get sponsors getting, and it generates the momentum. So, yeah, I lean more towards how does this develop players? How does this give players a pathway to potentially become Premiership players and England players, etc., down the line? But at the same time, it's how you get that club structure. I'm not a great fan of ring fencing. I probably changed my mind on that in the last couple of years, and partly through talking to people who have been involved in the Celtic setup, the Pro 14 and so on, and how they struggled with dead games and how they struggled to get crowds and sponsors and people interested. And that's the danger with ring fencing. And I also don't think it's good to ring fence the Championship either. I think there has to be that relegation and promotion with National 1. There has to be a progression route. So yeah, it is tough for the review group. There are no easy answers. Everybody, and as you mentioned there, we've got some great names on the group, but with that comes the challenge that a lot of people come with strong views, and you're trying to make some coherent recommendations and progress out of that. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment, a lot of views being taken on. I think we will come up with a route map, if you like, for the future of the Championship. Whether it will be as rosy as we all might hope, I'm less confident about that. There are no easy answers. I worry about the professional game as a whole in England as well. It's all right saying, well, we've got to create a sustainable championship, a financially sustainable championship. Do we think we've got a financially sustainable Premiership? Have we? Heck, you look through the books and the accounts of those Premiership clubs, and none of them are sustainable without philanthropic donations, whatever. And that's a problem for our game. It's all right. The easy answer is, okay, cut the salaries, but we cut salaries, we lose players to Japan, we lose players to France, we lose, and that undermines England winning the World Cup. So it's a tough process at the moment. There's lots of different angles to consider.
It's just like if the focus is a World Cup, which is every 4 years, I suppose one of the questions that I have is, if you don't win the World Cup, over those 4 years, the 4 years, it's got to be something that's just consistent. So if that doesn't happen, but we're still producing players, it's still a success. But it's just sort of, I know I imagine there's a lot of different views, and it's a bit tricky, isn't it? But yeah, that's sort of one that jumps out there for me. Yeah.
For us as a game going forward, there's so many alternative sports out there now, and so many alternatives for youngsters to get engaged in. It's constantly how we attract young people into rugby, and how we get them excited about it. And in England, they get excited if England are doing well.
Yeah.
With our Gloucester Hartpury women's teams playing some fantastic rugby at the moment. There's some great rugby to watch in that league. And I had my grandchildren down from Scotland last weekend. I took my granddaughter, who's about her age, right, 8, along to see Gloucester Hartpury play Quins, and it was brilliant. She got excited about it, she got excited about rugby. She's already in mini rugby at a home club, but now she's going back with a bit more excitement, and she got to talk to players afterwards and all the rest of it. So they're our future players. We can't just pick them up at 16 or 17. We've got to create them at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Do you think then, and I completely appreciate looking at the list on the strategic review, some the great and the good with rugby, but all with, I guess, skin in the game and an opinion in many respects. Do you think we will see, and I appreciate you're going to have to keep some things to yourself, but any sort of drastic changes when these recommendations are presented in the new year?
I think, if I'm honest, it's slightly early for us to say that at the moment, and with the group is still very much taken on board outside opinions as well. So it's not just about those that are sat around the table having to have all the answers. It's also about listening to other people in the game and getting their views as well. So we're still kind of storming and forming ideas at the moment, and then we'll have to start to narrow them down in the next few months. Is
there sort of a roadmap in place of how that looks then, and what might happen in, say, November, December, and the rest of this month?
Well, I think as Conor O'Shea, I'm sure he has shared it, the aim is to get some proposals to RFU Council and Board in the new year, and we're still aiming on that. We don't want this thing to drag out.
Can I have a look?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, if it's going to have any chance of making changes for next season, it's got to be ready for Christmas, basically.
I just, from a personal point of view, and I spoke to a few people, I'd quite like to see it move to the summer. You're talking about families, young people, young children watching rugby. You look at the cricket and what they've done with the 100. Especially sort of on the women's side, which Georgie Weiss used to play. And I think the championship mirrors it a little bit in many senses, trying to find that niche supporters. And can we make the game more attractive to families to watch? And would that be more attractive because we're watching rugby in warmer climates or warmer weather? And, it's that's got to be something that would potentially be on the table from your end, or I imagine it'd be discussed. But obviously there's a whole world calendar to look at as well there, isn't there? So it's not just as easy an idea, is it? But it would be a good way of attracting new supporters and keeping current, I think.
It is it's a big debate, isn't it? Summer rugby. I was a low speed second row in my day for many, many years, and the idea of hammering around on rock hard pitches never appealed too much. But I wasn't too worried about people being on a touchline watching either. So there's a bigger picture there. I think the problem for us is if we say, well, okay, we'll take the championship and make it a March till September league. It's how it integrates with the Premiership and national leagues. And how do you make sure that in that kind of scenario, those national league clubs still have the opportunity to progress and come into it? And how do you make it cross-linked? Because whether we like it or not, in my view, Premiership rugby clubs and Championship rugby clubs will inevitably come closer and closer and work more closely together going forward. When we first came into the Championship, we used to get a lot of stick because of our close relationships with Premiership clubs and dual registered players and etc. Now we never get any stick because everybody's doing it, across the board. And likewise, we've seen the demise of the A-team league in the Premiership. Well, because they've all reduced their squads, they've had to cut their cloth financially, etc. The last time we had a full A-team program in the early weeks of it, that you might have been as well watching box rugby because we were sending some of our second and third team box players to play A-team leagues for Premiership clubs. It was just crazy. So I'm glad the A-team league has kind of died away. It was, my fear was somebody was going to get seriously hurt when you're putting a second or third choice student out against a full-time pro. I think we will see the two merge more closely together, and that makes it really hard for one of them to go summer rugby and the other one not to.
How do you think Premiership clubs, and I appreciate it varies club to club, see their relationship, or they see the link with the Championship, or they see the role of a Championship club and league, I guess?
I think they vary, but on the whole, I do think there's a general realisation amongst Premiership clubs that the Championship gives them a great opportunity to get their younger players game time, and it also is a recruitment ground. There are players that don't necessarily go through that Premiership academy route, that mature in different ways and different time scales. And you mentioned Johnny Hill earlier on there as one of our alumni. I still remember Johnny Hill. He's enrolled as a student, college student, came to one of the trial afternoons after he'd enrolled, and straight away the coaches spotted him. He wasn't on Gloucester's radar, he wasn't on Worcester's radar, anybody. He was a local farmer's son. He went back to home that night and told his dad that he'd made the elite squad. And his dad, I still remember Johnny telling me, his dad gave him a smack round the head and told him to stop lying. There was no way you were in the elite squad. But, so without other routes, Johnny Hill wouldn't necessarily be there. Jake Pelledri's another one. There has to be other routes, and the Championship is a great way of providing that, and also a way of, when we look at front five forwards, not many of them break into Premiership sides at 19, 20. They need somewhere to be learning their craft and learning their game. So I think there is a huge role for the Championship to play in developing players, and the sooner both the Premiership and the Championship work more closely together instead of trying to work separately, the better.
That was the Championship Clubs podcast. Be sure to come back in a fortnight's time and follow us on social media at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter.